I'm Catherine Sheeran, host of the podcast Horse Tales with Cat. My guest today is an accredited life coach, breathwork teacher, and personal trainer who resides in Wicklow, Ireland. Aoife Leggett's formal education was in sports performance psychology and performance nutrition. However, she desired to do more and now works with individuals to build their confidence, strengthen their mindset, and perform at their best in sports, business, and life. Hailing from Bray in Wicklow County, Ireland, and growing up riding in the discipline of eventing, she naturally gravitated towards helping riders and has most notably worked with Cooley Farms, Ardeo sport horses, and global event horses. Aoife, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Catherine. Thank you for the introduction and for having me on. I'm excited to have a chat.
Normally, I like to start with what brought you to the sport, because I feel like horses seem to just naturally draw some of us to them. So I wondered, what was your experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. And yeah, I don't come from a horsey background. So I think, as you said there, I was always naturally drawn to horses. Like if they were in a field, I wanted to go and pet them. My cousin, when I was younger, she had a horse, so she was kind. She brought me to a couple of shows, and yeah, I just like always wanted to pet them, be around them. And I started riding kind of later, I suppose, maybe when I was 9 or 10 at a local riding school, and just took lessons weekly. Then kind of when I showed interest there, I got the chance to, work there on the weekends. We would work 2 weekends and then you'd get a helper lesson. So that was great as well. Really good character building, great to have a job, when you're underage, learn hard work, and also have a nice community and be around people who love horses as well. So yeah, the place where I learned how to ride was actually amazing, place called Festina Lente in Bray, and they provide employment and education for people with additional needs, as well as having a riding school. So some of the staff that worked there would have learning difficulties and that kind of thing. So it's just a really good exposure for me as a child to learn how to ride there and be in an environment that kind of welcomed everybody and tried to share the love for horses with so many different types of people. They also had programs for underprivileged kids from my area. So it's a super place to learn how to ride.
Yeah, that sounds very well-rounded.
Yeah, it was.
And then what drew you to the eventing side versus any of the other disciplines?
I think when I was a kid and when we would ride, I was sort of the one that was like, I'll ride the naughty pony, or, if my friends had any ones that were misbehaving, I would kind of ride them. So I think I liked maybe a bit of a thrill. I loved cross country. I always remember the first time I kind of properly did cross country, just the adrenaline and the thrill, like for hours afterwards, I was on a buzz. And then, yeah, I did some pony club stuff. So in pony club, you would have had a bit of everything. So yeah, I think that's what drew me to eventing, the thrill of it. And I do like all of the disciplines, but I think probably the cross country is usually what draws people to the eventing. So
it's interesting, even myself being in show jumping, people think we're brave, but I always say you can't beat an eventer because of just the fact that you say the cross country. I feel like those jumps don't come down. It's a whole different ballgame.
And the freedom of galloping across a field and it's just you and your horse. Yeah, sometimes people would be watching if there's good spectator facilities, but really you just feel like it's you and your horse, trying to conquer the course. So that's a lovely feeling as well. You do get kind of moments of peace and freedom when you are in between fences, which is a lovely feeling as well, which I don't know, do the show jumpers get that feeling quite as much? So it's a nice sport. I love it.
So I'm curious, at what point did you decide that you wanted to work in the sport? But it sounds from what I've read that you didn't have a dream to be a rider, which I think is very interesting when I talk to people that grow up in the sport and choose a different path. And at what point did you make that decision and how did that happen?
So I'm kind of laughing here on my side because I'm like, I actually don't think I made the decision. It sort of was something that just happened. I ended up buying a junior horse off a lady called Mel Rinn. She runs Ardeo sport horses now, and she was set up running a yard for a girl called Jodie Ronan. And so they were really kind to me in that I, had my horse in another livery yard, but they still were very much supported me if I had any questions, or if they were going to a show that was 4 hours away and there was space in the lorry, they would allow me to go with them. So I started, I suppose, going to a couple of shows with them, helping out a little bit at their yard sometimes if they needed a hand on the weekend. And then when I was in transition year in Ireland, where you get like a year in school kind of in between the serious sort of curriculums, you get a year where you do kind of more fun stuff. There's more outdoor activities. Some people take the year off. I went with them to Germany. So they had some horses out there training. So I got to travel out there and really enjoyed that experience. Then went back to school. And when I was in college then, Georgie and Richard from Cooley Farm, I used to help them a little bit. I had sold my horse at that stage and I would work for them during the holidays and things like that. And it was really, they were getting a new rider who was quite well known in Ireland. And I remember at the time it was just the two of them in their operation. They had maybe one person would come in to muck out the stable sometimes, and they rang me and they were like, you need to come down and you need to make it look like you work for us. And I was like, well, I'm in college at the moment. They're like, well, afterwards, can you come down? So I was like, yeah, okay, when I finish this lecture, I'll hop in my car and drive down. So I literally hopped in the car and drove down, and I suppose that was kind of the start of it. Then after college, I had enjoyed college, but I didn't really know what path I wanted to take right there and then. So I went to work for them basically, and then kind of said, oh, I need to get a proper job now, or I'll need to go and figure out what I want to do. And a number of years later, I was still there. But I suppose the reason I kind of stayed there for so long was because I was learning, growing, seeing their business grow, meeting new people and developing. And when I did leave, the main reason was because I felt like, I was at the end of my road there. I didn't feel like I was developing myself as much as I wanted to. So that's kind of what led me into the beginning of that career was the kind of just helping out at the weekends and stuff. And being a rider, I think it was not something that I wanted to do. I enjoyed riding and producing horses, but I'd be kind of an organized person, good at like managing things. And that was, I suppose, where my strengths were. So Cooley Farm, I kind of was the yard and operations manager, and I did a little bit of riding and produced kind of one or two horses myself as well, kind of more as a hobby, I suppose, actually.
I find that fascinating because I myself, as an amateur, have never had the dream of being a Grand Prix rider. I've always just wanted to be a good amateur rider, and it was just not something on my radar. So I can appreciate that. I just wondered kind of what your journey was, and it doesn't sound like it was a straight line. So I also was curious. So the degree in sports and performance psychology. So was that at the university in Dublin? Or
no, so I originally went and studied sociology, which what drew me to that was because I was interested in people and how they operate and how society works. And then afterwards, when I kind of retrained as a coach and a PT, breathwork teacher, performance nutritionist, and then I went back to college to study sport and performance psychology then, as part of my kind of re-education, I suppose. So I kind of see it in, well, I don't think I'll ever be finished educating myself. I think continuous education is something that people in my field of work should always be looking to do. And in general, actually, I think it's nice if you look at your CV or your year and you maybe haven't done anything that's developed you or challenged you, it's something to look at. But I sort of see my equestrian career there, 15 years or more in the industry, working long hours with different riders, with different dealers, different people, as sort of my hands-on, like really raw education of what the industry is like and what it's like the people are like, how competing works, what it's like to actually manage and work with horses. And then my kind of professional education in a different bucket has lots of different lanes, I would say, or different strands to it, if that's what would be a better way. Yeah, strands to my bow, I suppose. So sociology, even back then, not knowing what I wanted to do, I think there was a little inkling that people were what interested me, and the way they operate was what drew me to that original course.
So I love the name of your business. It's 360 Coaching. Thought maybe you could share with our listeners what it is exactly you do, because it does seem to me that you have a very holistic approach. And I think it's very forward thinking nowadays. I'm not sure that the horse industry 5 years ago would have embraced approaching, I mean, there was always a little bit of sports psychology, but it feels like you're at a really good time to be working with people in this area, because as I said, it just feels like it is forward thinking. So maybe if you wouldn't mind sharing with all of us what your approach is and how you came to that.
So I suppose like my main driver is always to help people. On my mission, I suppose, on my website is to help people be happier, healthier, and be more fulfilled. So I think that's nice because it applies to an amateur who just wants to be the best version of themselves and feel like they're putting their best foot forward, like they're managing their nerves, they're really enjoying their sport as well. And it also applies to a professional who's at the top of their game, who's managing themselves, their business, and teams of staff. Or I want all the people that I work with to be happy, healthy, and feel fulfilled and achieve their true potential. So to me, that needs a holistic approach. It's not just business. It's not just health. It's not just relationships or fitness or what you eat. We need to try and take a multifaceted approach to being the best versions of ourselves. And there's never a time, I don't think personally, or for long periods of time where you feel like, oh, I'm firing on all cylinders or I'm 100% in all these different areas. But the aim is to try and have a well-balanced approach so that, yes, your business is succeeding, but you're not at the expense of your health or your mindset or your happiness, that your business succeeds, but you're also looking after your health and you also have healthy relationships and you also have a bit of headspace where you can switch off. So I suppose that's where the name comes from. I think like we just talked a little bit there about my formal education, which is another nod to the fact that I want to be well educated in lots of different areas. So I'm qualified personal trainer. I don't necessarily bring that into my coaching loads, but if people want some advice or guidance in that area, at least I can tell. The more I know the industry, I know what the foundations should look like. So in terms of the way I work, most of my coaching is one-to-one online. I have a lot of clients overseas, which is really nice for me. And most of them will be on my coaching program, which would encapsulate kind of all of the skills that I have. So that would be mindset coaching, that would be goal setting, that would be incorporating breath work into things if that's something that they are open to, nutritional support to make sure that they are fueling themselves correctly. And I think it's a nice balance and a nice mix. Within the program, everybody will have different needs. So we're able to kind of tailor that so it's personalized as well. But I really developed it, I suppose, with the idea that I was like, right, how can I best serve the people that I work with? What do I feel like be, as you said, a holistic or a 360 approach to helping people not only improve their mindset or their performance, but in general, be happier humans, And again, whether you're an amateur or you're a professional, the sport is tough and it's challenging. So we do want to make sure that people are still enjoying it. And if they're not, take a pause. What needs to change? As you said, it's a dangerous sport and it's a tough sport. So for me, I think it's important that people do enjoy it while they're in it.
So let's just unpack a few of the things you do. I was curious, what would you say is mindset? How would you describe that to a listener?
So I suppose it's your outlook, the way that you see the world, the way that you perceive challenges, the way that you overcome setbacks. I suppose it's in the way that you speak to yourself and others. And I suppose just your overall view of things. So you can think of an analogy of a pair of glasses. Somebody might, people say rose tinted glasses, or you might have somebody that has a really negative mindset and they might have really dark glasses on if glasses were a mindset in that kind of sense. So in essence, just the way you perceive the world and the challenges, setbacks, and also victories and successes that you face.
And then how do you set about changing the mindset?
I mean, it's always a case of starting person by person. And some people might not want to change their mindset or not need to, but in general, we all do well with having a little bit of a push into a more kind of positive mindset or having a more growth orientated mindset. So horses and the horse world as well can sometimes be a little bit challenging in terms of people talking about other people's horses, there being rides that are maybe moved from one rider to another. So it's very easy for it to become kind of a little bit of a negative kind of chatty environment. So I suppose small steps is the way that I would help somebody that did want to change their mindset or their outlook. We would look at things like their self-talk. How do they manage stress? What systems do they have in place to make sure that they set themselves up to be in the best mindset possible for the day? And easy example is, are you waking up, snoozing your alarm 10 times, then looking at your emails or Instagram? That's giving you anxiety before you even get out of bed. Grab a coffee, like rush to the yard and get on the first horse without even having a chance to have a conversation with your staff or, check in with anyone. So we would work at having a system in place. Like, can we get up early? Can we give ourselves a bit of time to regulate our own nervous system? Bit of exercise, maybe, bit of sunlight or fresh air. Is there a healthy meal in there? Or if you don't like eating in the morning, is there a protein shake? Can you get to the yard with enough time to have a conversation with the people that work with you and then get on your horse with a different approach and a different mindset, essentially? So it starts slowly by having a look at what their day-to-day is like, what their mindset is like, and then we'll make changes. Like I said, routine, the way you talk to yourself, the people you surround yourself with also affect your mindset. Having a growth mindset approach, so seeing those challenges and setbacks as opportunities for growth, taking feedback in a positive way rather than seeing it as criticisms. And one that I like, that's very simple, is, I suppose, having a bit of an approach to gratitude, just pausing and being grateful for the things that you do have, which is easy to forget about when we get stressed. But when you start to kind of pick and point out the good that you have in your life, it kind of changes the way you see things. Again, it's very easy to pick out all the bad things that you have going on in your life, and that will affect the way your mood is and the way you are. So yeah, long story short, person to person, it'll be different, but it's like building blocks. And over time, people will see then a big shift in terms of their mood, how they're acting, how they're responding to challenges.
And I was wondering, is there one universal challenge that you see for across the board when you've dealt with riders and mindset?
I think just that trap of getting stuck in a kind of environment or system where people are kind of just spending all of their time talking about others and kind of being naysayers rather than just trying to stay in their own lane, focus on how they can improve themselves. I'd say that would be kind of the biggest trap that I see in terms of not only the riders that I work with, but I know from being in the industry myself, like it's rare to have somebody kind of step back and say, I'd actually rather not, have a conversation about them. Can we just talk about me and you, or I'd like to catch up? And I started doing it with a couple of friends when I left the industry and I was working in a different industry before I became a coach, but even then, you see the first couple of times people will be taken aback, but then actually your relationship deepens and grows so much because you end up like actually catching up and talking to each other about each other's life, not about somebody else down the road or riding a new horse. So that would be kind of the biggest trap. And like you see it every riding schools, riding clubs, it's difficult because it's like a pack, I suppose, or it is like an actual school will have little cliques and groups and stuff, but it can be really empowering and refreshing, I suppose, to step back from falling into that trap.
I think you brought up a very good point, because traditionally it almost feels sometimes like people prey on riders' failures as opposed to their successes. And I don't know if that comes from an insecurity with people in terms of them wanting greater success, so they feel like they have to bring somebody else down to get that. So I just think that's interesting and a very valid point, just not talking about other people's rides and what's going wrong. Because I think the other thing I've noticed in the last several years with just the increase in social media, someone's ride is out there on Facebook or Instagram within minutes of them having completed it. And so all of a sudden there's a judgment placed on that. And I wondered how you felt that has impacted mindset with riders, both amateurs and professionals.
I think massively. Like I taught at the Young Rider preseason camp there in March. And I was talking to one of the course designers, and he was like, I'm not on social media or anything, but he's like, you see the kids, they cross the finish line, the first thing they do is take out their phone, start like taking a Snapchat or a video. They don't even pat their horse. I think that is a prime example of how much it has taken over from the sport, and ultimately like the enjoyment of having that moment with your horse after crossing the finish line and having that adrenaline rush is now being overrun by somebody's wanted to get a video of themselves or something. And I think it does have a place in the sport. Definitely, it's great for riders to raise their profile, to get new owners, to attract sponsors. That is great, but I think you're right. And it's not just in horses, it's in all schools, industries, is the fact that presence online or videos online have a huge impact on people's mental health. So I think it's a balancing act. It's something that you have to try and help young riders understand like the importance of using it safely. In that camp, they were amazing. They were talking to the kids about, or how they present themselves online is essentially them presenting themselves to a sponsor or an owner if that's a road they want to go down. So I think because loads of people use it, it can be hard to understand the implications that it can have, long term in terms of your reputation or the way people perceive you. But as much as we can, try and stay in our own bubble and see, watching the videos of our own rides back and saying, right, what could I have done better there? Is there anything that I need to go away and work on? And like I always say to my clients, trying to stay in your own lane and focus on yourself. And even if you're sat like watching around, instead of saying, geez, they really missed there, that was terrible, I thought they'd be better, you could just change your language and say, perhaps with a bit more leg around the corner there, they would have got a better shot. It's a completely different way to watch around. One way you're trying to learn for yourself and see what you can get from the round. The other round, like you said, you're just trying to drag someone down to make yourself feel better. And unfortunately, the easier one to do is to try and drag someone down to make yourself feel better. So it takes more energy for you actually to learn from around or try and encourage others.
So I wanted to shift gears still within the mindset, because I know you yourself went through some challenges in your own physical body in terms of, as I recall, having a skiing accident. Wondered if you could share a little bit around that and how your mindset impacted your recovery.
So I was in Canada. I had left my job at Cooley Farm, and my couple of friends were going to Canada to do a ski season. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was like, grand, that's my out. I can go there and have a bit of time to just work a regular job and decide where I want to go from there. So I went there, and I think it was the day before New Year's. I was actually skiing with a load of people that I lived with, and they were really good skiers and snowboarders. So it's a little bit over my head, and it had snowed loads overnight. And me and a couple of the others said, like, we're getting tired now. We'll ski down and we'll ski out. So we were going pretty fast down to ski down to the town, and I just caught a bit of snow as I turned that had kind of come into a mogul, and basically caught the ski, and all of my weight pivoted down the mountain, and I just heard like the leg landed down pretty hard. And then my friend's like, well, we need to call ski patrol. And I was like, no, I'll be fine. And I just skied past somebody in one of those little bags that they put you in, and I was like, oh my God, I do not want to go in one of them ever. And then I was like, no, I'm not going in one of the bags. And so I kind of tried to ice the knee a little bit on the snow. And then I got up and I said to my friend, okay, you're going to have to push this foot back down and click it in. And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, just push it down. So she pushed it in, and I stood up, and then I went and did one turn, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be sick. I fell over straight away. I was like, you're going to have to call ski patrol. So I skied down. Anyway, what had happened was I'd broken the tibial plateau, which is quite a painful place to have a break, and tore all the ligaments in my knee, tore my ACL, MCL, damaged the meniscus, done really bad stuff to my knee, basically. So I had it operated on in Canada after some rehab, but because I had the break had to heal first. And while the break was healing, they kind of locked my knee at a 90-degree angle. So when they took the brace off, my leg just was bent permanently. I couldn't straighten it. So I spent months trying to get the leg straightened out. And then when they operated on it, the knee, I suppose, went back to a bent position, because I had that's the way it had been for ages, or like a slight bend in it, and scar tissue built up in the knee. So spent another year trying to rehab it. I actually came home because I thought if I was in Canada, I thought during the summer I'd be able to cycle around and be mobile that way, but I really was not very mobile, and it was giving me a lot of pain and stuff. So when I came home, I had it operated on then a second time in Ireland, and since then has been fine. But yeah, I mean, I was into the gym beforehand, but I suppose like any young kid kind of gets into the gym, you go on the cross trainer a little bit, you maybe see a video online and you might practice that. But my injury, I suppose, really made me learn about proper form, how to strengthen the muscles around my knee so that it didn't happen again, how to lift correctly, the importance of core stability and core strength to help prevent any like future falls and things like that. So, and then my mindset, like it was very difficult. I realized when I got injured, I'd never really had an injury before, how much being active helped me with my mindset, helped keep me sane and fit and healthy. And I struggled weight wise, like I put on a lot of weight. I felt very lonely. I didn't like my friends who were out there were amazing. Found it really difficult to get up and down to the shower, so they would have to help me. You know, they were extremely patient and helpful, but just being so at the mercy of somebody else being around to help you get up and have a shower was really a learning lesson, I suppose, for me. And then I suppose just that roller coaster, I suppose, of emotions. Like my physio out there was great, but I remember her saying, I wish I could have a circle of people who have done their ACL, because to everyone else, it's like, oh, I've heard of loads of people that have done that. But when you've actually done it and you're really incapacitated or you can't walk and that kind of stuff, it affects you hugely. I remember my auntie had done it a few years before, and I had some sympathy for her, but I had no understanding really about the effects, the amount of for you to put into rehab, the pain after the surgery and all that. So I think that really, again, deepened my understanding of having an injury and recovering from it and feeling lonely when nobody else is in the same boat as you. The rehab side of things was amazing in terms of learning about how much the management of horses and their soft tissue and their injuries actually would help me with managing my own injury. Everything was interlinked, and at the time, obviously, I was devastated. I cut my 2 years out there short. I couldn't walk. Like I spent so much money on physio and stuff, but now I know when I look back that that's the best money I ever spent, like educating myself on how to strengthen my body correctly. And it was a great learning lesson. So I know they always say you'll look back and really appreciate the challenges that you've been through. And that is definitely one. So that was me and my knee injury.
Well, no, and I think that's important for people to appreciate about you, because I would feel that that probably makes you a very good coach, because you really absolutely can relate to people on that level and you can understand the wave of emotions they go through and the time and just getting back to where you were. And I think that's such a journey. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, and like I had a client like last year who had the exact same injury, and for them, he really enjoyed or he loved that I had been through it. Now everyone's injury is different and everyone's path back to fitness is different, but like you said, just knowing what that really feels like was nice. And I will say to people, when you're rebuilding, it's not trying to get back to the you before. You're a different version of yourself, so just focus on building that rather than saying, well, I used to be able to do this, or when can I be back to my old self. And I have a lot of friends at the moment and sisters who have kids, and it's the same kind of thing. When somebody has a baby, they're like, I want to get back to pre-baby me. I'm like, well, you're a completely different person now. It's like a new version of you has been born. With that comes a different recovery and comes a different person that will come out at the end. So I always, for myself and for everyone building back, you're just trying to build different version that hopefully will be better and stronger.
Well, and I think you've pinpointed that you can give them hope. There is a new version of you that actually might be a better version than you had previously. Yeah. So I think that's all good. So the other thing I wanted to touch on was nutrition, because I immediately thought about my own coaches that I've had over the years and watching them at a horse show, and they consume almost nothing except energy drinks. And I'm wondering, why do you think that is such a problem in the horse world, that no one seems to take time to eat? And how do you think you can remedy it? And I guess just even like 2 or 3 simple things somebody could do, because I would tell you it's almost like a competition that they will brag about how little they consume in a day. And it just seems so unhealthy on so many levels.
Yeah, you're right. It's common in lots of different countries that I've been in and lots of different riders. And yeah, like you said, it can start to be a competition between, who's had the most energy drinks or the least amount of sleep or whatever. So I think the industry is slowly starting to see that that's not the best way to operate and starting to treat themselves as athletes, riders. So, and whether you're an amateur rider or a professional, like you are an athlete, like you're doing a sport. And I always try to encourage riders to treat themselves as they would their horses. So you wouldn't starve your horse all day or just give them sugary treats or just give them oats before a competition. You'll plan out when they need to eat their meals, what they are. You'll have a system in place that you know works because that's the way you feed them during the week. If you have had a horse for a number of years and you know, okay, maybe they need a little bit extra or they need to be a bit calmer at the competitions, you feed and supplement accordingly. And that would kind of be my advice to people, is to take a step back and start planning out your own meal schedule. And I suppose because the industry is so labor intensive, looking after horses that's where people kind of were the last thing that people think about is what will I eat? So starting to create room and you never have time to prep food, but you have to make it and find it. Put your phone down and don't scroll or don't watch TV for half an hour and just get yourself a healthy lunch. Or if you don't like eating in the morning, have a protein smoothie, get something into you, or a banana. That's a really handy one, or some rice cakes maybe. But my biggest takeaway would be to figure out a plan for yourself and just start to tweak that every show. Like a lot of people will feel sick on the morning of competing. So figure out what you can eat. Like a banana is pretty easy, even half a banana. Or now sometimes before I go training, I'll have a date. They're really small. They don't take much effort to eat. They're not too dry. They're not going to be difficult to consume. So, and I think as well, being educated on what food is and macronutrients like carbs, proteins, fats, try and have balanced meals so that you are fueling your body. Obviously, before you're competing or if you have a strenuous kind of day, you'll need to increase your carb intake, and those proteins are going to be really important in terms of your recovery. So same way you're educated on what your horse eats, what haylage or hay they're eating, what kind of nuts grains they're eating, get educated on your own food intake. There's unfortunately lots of misinformation online, but learning the basics and just applying them will be really helpful to get on the right track. And look, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just trying to make a couple of better choices. So instead of 3 energy drinks, maybe you have a protein smoothie in the morning. You might want an energy drink during the day because you don't want to flip everything on its head. And then after you compete, try and have a meal that has a lot of protein and then also fats and carbs for a nice balanced meal there. But I think hopefully the badge of honor of drinking loads of energy drinks will start to dissipate as people get a bit more clued on to things, because it's not healthy or sustainable long term.
Mm-hmm. It was interesting for me because I watched a movie it was the documentary on Shaun White, big snowboarder from the US.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blown away. I'm quite inspired by his story. And I just thought, here's somebody who's young doing a sport that is very intensive, and just the discipline he showed in terms of what he ate and how he worked out and the physio he did. And I kind of thought, gosh, that is something that we should be doing in the riding world. And I don't know that the challenges that we see in the sport with riders and horses is so common in other areas. And as I said, I've never really understood exactly why, because to your point, we are athletes, but it just seems that it's a whole different lifestyle. So thank you for those.
I hope that some of the riders that kids look up to, like say the Shaun Whites of equestrianism, start to lead by example in terms of eating well and fueling their bodies. And I know probably more so than any other sport, like a lot of riders drink alcohol quite a bit, where other athletes would stay away from it. So I know a coach that teaches a lot of jockeys who was really shocked by it and just couldn't understand it. So hopefully from the top down, that culture will change, or perhaps from the bottom up, the younger generation might just suddenly start being like, no, we're not going to treat our bodies like this anymore. But yeah, it will be great to see, because I mean, I know myself, you probably know yourself too. I know I have a friend who sometimes eats really badly, and like we all do. And she was like, I just feel so much better after even 2 or 3 days. You don't feel so sluggish. You have more energy. You're not bloated. Like you just feel like a different version of yourself, which is the nicer way to feel rather than sluggish, hungry, always feeling like your sugar is dipping up and down. So yeah, hopefully the tides are changing for riders as well.
And so then I was hoping to move you over to the breath work, just because that's sort of the third pillar of what you do, and was curious to see what you would say. Maybe you could explain to our listeners the three different kinds of breathing techniques there are and when you might use each one.
So I'll start off by saying breath work. I remember when I was a kid or like a young rider, I used to get wound up before like, riding or doing rounds. And my mum would always say, take a deep breath. And I'd be like, why does she keep saying that to me? Obviously, I'm breathing. Otherwise, I'd be passed out on the floor. But I honestly didn't know how to take a deep breath. And I can tell you, I've met so many people that do not know how to take a deep breath. And again, if I meet anyone who's a little bit like, oh, I don't believe in any of that woo-woo stuff, I'm like, if your horse holds its breath for a whole show jumping round or a dressage test, or you're riding a horse and you're saying, I just need this horse to relax and take a breath, it's the same thing. Do you know what I mean? So I always love to use the horses as an example for anyone who's skeptical about any of the things or not open-minded to any of the things that I do. So the breath work is such a powerful tool that it's another really simple way, I think, for people to improve the way that they ride or the way that they manage competition, like their mindset, or actually just life in general. And what I love about the kind of breathwork coaching that I do with people, especially the athletes, I'm like, if you decided tomorrow that you actually wanted to never ride a horse again, this skill will stand to you in anything that you do. It's a skill that you don't need any equipment with you to do it. You can do it without people even really realizing, and it can have real impactful physical changes within your body. So I teach breathwork in a variety of different ways. I do it with my one-to-one clients. I sometimes, if clients are really busy, I'll send them a recording if we've already done some training. I teach it in corporate environments in like big law firms. And I teach, some of my own just private classes of people that I know. I have a group of golfers that I taught like last year. So it really applies to all different sports or personal life. So a few different breathwork techniques that I teach, and all of them will have a slightly different impact on our bodies. What I try to do with people is like teach them all of the different techniques and then allow them to figure out, okay, this one really works for me, or those two mixed together really seem to get me in the right headspace before I go cross country. So allowing them to experience them, learn them, practice them daily, and then make educated choices for themselves in terms of their preparation. So again, I'll try and encourage people that I'm working with to just do 10 minutes in the morning, just daily, as a way to ingrain those patterns and habits in their mind and in their body. Also means that they leave their house in the morning in a good headspace. But also, yeah, like I said, just to really ingrain that pattern. I'm again use an example. It's like if you're working on leg yield on your horse and you go for a lesson and then you don't practice for 3 weeks and then you go to a show and you have a bit of leg yield at the show, you're going to be like, oh no, what are the buttons again? What did my trainer say? So it's the same kind of thing. The main one that I find helpful for athletes or riders, because usually we're trying to get our adrenaline to settle down before we go into a ring, or maybe the morning of a show, is the vagus nerve breath. So that's a really simple one. It's just breathing in through the nose and then following that with a long, slow exhale out of the mouth. So, and even as you start to just see me do it there, you can see my shoulders soften. And a couple of those breaths repeated one after the other will do a few things. They'll slow your heart rate down. They're going to regulate your breathing. So they're going to stop you taking short, shallow breaths just in the chest. And they're going to bring your nervous system out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. So a really good one as well, like just doing that breath and focusing on the exhale can stop a mind that is spinning or catastrophizing or starting to think about who's over there or who's over here. And I like to call that the anchor breath because of its really calming effect. So that's the vagus nerve breath. For that one, again, just focusing on a long, slow exhale. That's one that you do in the pocket before you go in if you're feeling like really anxious. I do it sometimes when I'm crammed in a little corridor about to board a flight and everyone's going mental. I just do a bit of breathing. So that's that one. Box breathing is a really popular one that lots of people will have heard of. Business people love box breathing. It's a nice way to balance everything out. And it's just a count, inhaling for a count, holding for a count, exhaling for a count, and holding for a count. And what I like about breathwork too is that like the competitive ego has no place in breathwork. If you say, I can do box breathing for 10 seconds, I'm like, really? I don't think it's having the desired effect there. Like your face is going purple and you're not regulated or calm. So for box breathing, just start with 3 seconds. If that actually, like sometimes even people are like, I can't hold for 3, it feels too overwhelming. Just start to build up to maybe 4 or 5 seconds. Is like it doesn't necessarily matter the count or the hold. It's all about regulating the systems. So that one again is going to regulate your heart rate, your respiratory system. But that one people love because of its ability to focus the mind. You're thinking of the counts, you can't really think of much else. And I had a group of high-level footballers in a room the other week, and like for me, box breathing wouldn't be my favorite type of breath. But one guy was like, I have had a ball of anxiety in my stomach since he had to fly over from England for the workshop. And he was like, when we did the box breathing, I could just feel it all. It just suddenly melted away. So it is, like I said, they're all really powerful, and people will find ones that they love themselves. So that's box breathing. Natural breathing or diaphragmatic breathing then is a nice big deep inhale and then a release on the exhale. So and that is going to draw loads of oxygen into the body. So again, it's going to improve our the way we're breathing. So it's going to draw that breath down into the belly. So like I said, when we're nervous, we're going taking short, shallow breaths here. A nice deep diaphragmatic breath is going to open up that diaphragm, open up the ribs. It's going to oxygenate the whole body as you draw in that air, feeding the cells and tissues. And then that like exhale, that letting go, it's going to release tension. It's going to soften everything. So that's a good one if you can feel yourself like really tense, or if you're looking to get a nice quick recovery in terms of like after a show, maybe you're feeling really tired or burnt out, or if you're working and you feel like you've hit a slump, maybe at 3 o'clock, whether that's on a horse or whether you're horse riding or at a desk, a couple of those breaths can really help to energize the body. And then there's a few other ones that I use. The coherent breathing is a balanced inhale and exhale. So 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. And that's one of my favorite ones. It's a really nice healing breath. And actually it's really ancient breath that is used or found in like yoga and a lot of chanting and stuff. If you count the way they sing it, they're actually breathing in and out for that long count. So they do say in some of the breathwork books that that's why people leave church or group gatherings like that and feel so good, because they have regulated that breathing, respiratory and nervous system through the singing or the chanting or whatever that they've done. So that's a nice one too. Then you have the physiological sigh and a couple of other sort of techniques that I would use to help people release tension out of their body. But that's just scratching the surface. There's so many techniques out there. Same as with the nutrition and with the fitness, I always encourage people just to like start with something simple, build that base and that knowledge, find what works for you, and then explore more if you're really enjoying it. Like there's obviously Wim Hof breathing and lots of different types of breathing now. The ones that I teach, I think, are really accessible and able to be applied when you're performing, you know, when you're on the horse, which I think is really, really helpful. It makes them effective and useful techniques. So yeah, that's kind of breathwork side of things.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I still have a recollection of years ago. I had a trainer when we course walked. She would actually suggest to me, okay, there's a spot where you can breathe in the corner before the triple combination or what have you. And I sort of had got away from that. And now I think about it more when I'm in the ring, picking spaces to actually breathe. So I think that that's very useful information you've shared.
It stops us rushing. Sorry to cut it, but like
no,
that's what gets you in the ring, just to calm everything down. And like I do a good bit of speaking in front of crowds and stuff, and like I use it. It's such a skill. It's like just breathe, 2, 3, and it means that you're able to collect your thoughts and you're not tense and you're just pausing where you should be pausing. But if you've allowed everything to just get too fast and be on overdrive, you never take that pause. So yeah, it's a great tool or strategy that she's told you to do, which, you know, we can all use anytime, not even on a horse. Just pause every now and again and take a deep breath.
So as we wind down, I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite thing about what you do? What brings you the greatest joy?
I think just seeing the shift in people, the change in their energy, in the way they view themselves, in their outlook on life is just, it's amazing. Like, and I get off calls and I'll be like absolutely buzzing to see somebody maybe come on a little bit like deflated or down. And then after they have a plan, they're energized, they're ready to go, their whole body language has shifted. So that for me, I suppose, is the most amazing thing to get to do as a coach. And it's not really my doing. I'm just helping them by facilitating, asking good questions and supporting them. Also lucky that I work with clients that I love. I really enjoy the clients that I work with. I get to make sure that we are a good fit before we work together. I always have a discovery call with clients and I want them and me to feel like we're the right match, not just, oh yeah, we'll work together, that's fine. So that means that I love the work that I do and that I have a good connection with all those riders as well. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is seeing people come lacking a bit of self-belief, feeling overwhelmed, feeling a bit stuck, not backing themselves, having their confidence maybe peak and trough sometimes, or allowing their nerves to run the show, and then seeing them kind of transform into just people who have plans, who feel like they're on top of their lives, they back themselves, they're able to be confident, but also if they have a knock, build themselves, know how to build themselves back up, ultimately be happy and healthy and fulfilled. That's what I want for them. That's what I want for myself. And that's, I suppose, my favorite part of the job.
It sounds very fulfilling.
Yeah, it is, definitely. And I've had a few points in my career where I've been, this is not the right place for me. And I think, especially as horse people, we have great intuition because we're so used to being tuned into animals. So I've learned to listen to my intuition now and allow that to lead me. And it's paid off massively. And I always kind of, I said to myself a few times, I'm going to listen to those little whispers or the energy shifts that are showing me which direction to go in. And I've been at points again where I've said, now I'm being forced to, or your body is giving different reactions to really show me that I need to make a change. I think that's what does lead you to a path of fulfillment, is following your purpose, listening to that intuition, that little voice or whatever you want to call it in your head, the positive one, and finding something that you enjoy.
So if our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they find you?
Yeah, so the best place is probably Instagram. So my Instagram handle is at Aoife Leggett Coach. Aoife is an Irish name, which makes things slightly more complicated, but I'm sure you'll share the spelling. It's Aoife. That has details about my program. It's got some videos about educational content to try and help people, and a little bit more so that people can get to know me. My website is 360 Coaching, so that's probably easier to spell as well. They can find me on there. I'm on LinkedIn as well. My email is aoife360coaching.ie, and kind of the main places where I'll be hanging out.
Well, Aoife, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. And I wish you all the best with your business in the future. And I think our listeners have probably got some good takeaways today from just scratching the surface of what you do.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Yeah, it's been lovely. If anyone has any questions, they can reach out to me. But yeah, it's been lovely to kind of share my story and just have a chat with you as well. So hopefully they've gotten some goodness out of the podcast. And yeah, thanks again.
You're welcome. If you'd like to learn more about our guest today and upcoming episodes, please feel free to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Horsetails with Cat.